buffering. He is the villain.
The grandma doesn't help at all.
No. Capital Nazi.
Holy cow, he's so old. People who have read the books, I'm sorry, I don't know any of it.
Another Nerd Dance video. Reese again. And we're here to talk about the newest installment in the Hunger Games franchise, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which we watched last night or Tuesday.
We're
this
actually
yeah.
getting ahead of it. It's gonna be for once. As opposed to months or decades after it's been released. So yeah.
Yeah. I'll just start by saying that after watching it last night, my brain kind of just shut up and I couldn't form a coherent thought. I felt how it was, and I was just like, it was good. That's all I could come up with.
Yeah.
It was great, but like, it shut down my brain or something.
Processing.
There's so much to process. There's so much information and context for like everything and references, and I was buffering.
It was, as somebody who I greatly enjoyed the original movies, I can't say I never really got as into the books as much, but I'm not much of a book person in general. But I was very apprehensive going into the movie. I wasn't sure how to feel. I was just kind of keeping my expectations completely tempered and not expecting anything in the movie. And I came out very, very pleasantly surprised. It was quite good. It was very entertaining, very intriguing the whole time, and very different from the other movies.
Yeah.
Because this one, the Hunger Games actual part of it is almost like a footnote.
Yeah, it's only like
an
an
actual story.
10 to 15 minutes.
It's more than that. Probably like 30 to 40, but
yeah.
It's in comparison to the rest of the movie, it has 3 parts to it.
Yes.
So the movie split into 3 parts, which are basically just like each part is a...
Basically what the section of the story is focused on.
Right, it's like which part of Snow's life, basically. So like his role as a mentor for the games, and then his role as a peacekeeper, and so it's very interesting. It felt very very story. What is the
character driven?
Character driven and episodic. That's what I was thinking of. It felt very episodic because there's the 3 main segments telling a different part of the story, and it was very cool. It was very cool. It surprised me a lot.
Yeah. We'll see if I can even make thoughts yet. Yeah, the music was good. The music was very good.
Music was very good. Rachel Ziegler, whose name I had to look up her name beforehand because I wanted to say Renee Zellweger, and then not right person. Completely different person. But she was very, very good. All of the songs she did, she basically nailed it on every single one.
Yeah, it was great.
With not only just the singing, but the attitude and the portrayal of her character in the moment, depending on what song she's singing and what moment, was fantastic.
Yeah, because she sings.
Her ability to portray emotion like oh crap, everything's going wrong, while still performing the song perfectly was just fantastic.
She has one song she performs twice in 2 very different contexts, and the performance is so different, and it's great.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this song again, but then you watch the scene and you're like, no, this needs to be the way it was. It was very, very well done. We're gonna try. We want to try to avoid spoilers of this one since it just came out. I don't know. We're very bad at that.
Yeah, we could try
I
and
would
do
say-
a little bit of non-spoiler, and then the rest of it we'll just rent, and I'll try and put a timestamp in there for everybody.
Let's try and kind of like what we did with Ahsoka, where we just talk about our feelings of it overall, and then we'll inevitably go into a tangent about.
But we'll try and delay them.
Yeah. So, in terms of, I have a very interesting. I had a very interesting reaction to the movie because it was, in terms of like the actual overarching story of like the world that was being set up and what was being told. I enjoyed, I think, the original more just because they set up the world and they bring you the concept of the Hunger Games. But in terms of characters, I actually preferred Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes because each character, like Snow is just such an interesting character in this. I forget who, I think I still have
Something Blythe.
Blythe, yeah.
Thomas Blythe? That was close.
Tom does a fantastic job at playing a young Snow and also making him making it realistic for why he turns out the way he does. Because it's very interesting to see, because his whole, like, this isn't major spoilers or anything, because obviously if you've seen Hunger Games and Snow,
you know how it ends.
he turns bad at some point. So basically this movie is you're going into just to see how that happens. And from the beginning you're like, oh, Snow is a good guy, but he's incredibly paranoid and he's doing everything he can to leverage other people to lift himself up. So there's several moments throughout the movie where people that are his friends, he will just betray, and then immediately after betraying them, they don't know he's betrayed them at this point, but he'll just continue to tell them, no, hey, I'm here to protect you, I'm trying to help you, blah blah blah, and then the repercussions of his betrayal happen right afterwards, and you're like, so it's like you want to root for him because he feels genuine right up until the point that he makes a decision, and you're like, oh no, this guy's
nope, he is the villain.
He is the villain. It's you have to. He does a very good job of convincing you that he is a good guy, and then you have to keep reminding yourself throughout the movie that no, he's actually, like, he will become the villain, and there's all these little hints throughout the movie as to how that happens, and it's super interesting to watch.
Yeah, I like his cousin Tigress's line near the beginning. She's saying, "You're a good man. I don't want you to end up like your father." When I looked at his eyes, all I saw was hate. And then at the very end, he, is getting what he wants, and he's getting this high position, and he walks up and goes like, "How do I look?" And she says, "You look exactly like your father." And I'm just like, ooh.
And the other thing about that is they turned. So Tigress is in Mockingjay Part 2.
Yes.
Obviously, she looks very different.
Yes.
In Mockingjay Part 2, but they do a great job also of making her realistic in the sense of why she ends up joining the rebels and Katniss and everything in Mockingjay, because you can tell as the movie progresses, she is very distraught by how Snow is behaving and turning out. Like, she's very concerned for him the whole time, and she's obviously not comfortable with anything that he's doing, but she's like trying to get him to turn around, but in doing it as best she can, but she's just is failing. And yeah, it's sad to watch her go through that, especially because the grandma doesn't help at all.
No, the grandma is
the grandma's the worst. So the only family Snow has in this movie is his cousin Tigress and his grandmother, and she sucks.
Like,
'Cause she's-
everyone in the districts is a savage,
they're like
and they should
dogs.
be treated as such.
Yeah, they are less than dogs.
Capital Nazi.
Which is basically just what the capital is, but she is like, she's the embodiment of the capital.
Every single
Tigress
character we
is
meet,
the-
she's like the
Yeah.
most blatant.
So you have the grandmother who kind of represents the capital, and then you have Tigress who kind of represents basically humanity and like, hey, you need to look at these people look at them
As more than
just tributes and more than just sacrifices. Look at them as people. And so she's pulling him in one direction, grandmother's pulling him in the other direction, and then throughout the story you can see those two influences happen, and it's really, really interesting. It's a really interesting watch.
So good.
It's really because yeah, I was going into it expecting like, oh man, they waited, it's been years since the last Hunger Games movie, like in the cash grab, and especially with all the movies that have been coming out recently that are just blatantly cash grabs. I was very concerned about this movie. But then we watched it and I was pleasantly surprised. Another very interesting thing about it, because I've only ever read, I think the first book and the start of the second, but like I said, I never really got into reading all the way through them. What I didn't realize is, obviously I never read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I didn't realize that Lucky Flickerman had been around since then, because he's the host of the Hunger Games during Katniss's as well, which means he is significantly older than Snow. And so, which I'm willing to forgive because it's the capital and they have all this crap, like surgery and all of these things that are just like, it's all about abundance and luxury and everything. So obviously Lucky, being one of the most famous people ever for hosting the Hunger Games, gets all of these procedures to give him just ridiculously long life. But he's just around, and he's already at least in his late 30s to early 40s in this movie.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, holy cow, he's so old. Because this movie takes place during the 10th which means there's 64 years that Lucky has been hosting the Hunger Games, so he's at least 100. Unless there's some other, unless it's like his son or something, but that wouldn't make sense either.
Quick, what is that? Would you load?
It's a different actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Stanley Tucci plays him in.
Caesar Flickerman.
Oh, so it must be father. Father, son.
Son.
Again, people who have read the books, I'm sorry, I don't know anything. That makes a lot more sense because he's Lucky Flickerman. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything resolved.
He is not over 100.
He is not 100. It's just the father-son. Okay, I assume. Again, we're just guessing, but at this point. But
which Lucky's a fun character.
He is a very fun character. He's terrible.
Yes.
He's an awful person.
But he's just such a big personality that it's fun to watch. And he's a weatherman and a part-time magician, and he introduces himself as such every single time he's introduced.
He's like, oh yeah, the capital's favorite weatherman and part-time magician, Lucky Flicker.
Yeah, and he flicks a coin at the beginning of one scene when he's first introduced, and then they have a whole conversation with the tributes in the place where they're being kept.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the scene, he catches the coin.
Yeah, and it's
just
a great touch. It's a wonderful touch.
Yeah.
And he was very entertaining. I think he played by... Shoot. I don't know that the people in this movie... That's the one thing that I do love about this movie, is the majority of the main characters are played by lesser-known actors. They're not like the big-name Hollywood actors. They're... Well, because it's... I mean, a lot of the cast is young.
Yeah.
But like
One of them
the
by
big
name.
name actors all play relatively minor characters, like side characters. But Jason Schwartzman plays Lucretius Lucky Flickerman. What a name!
Welcome to the capital.
Welcome to the cabinet. That will say, this movie had some awesome names in it. Some very good names, like the other characters. Sejanus Plinth.
Janus Plinth.
What a name!
He is a wonderful human being.
He is a wonderful human being, and of course that goes just wonderfully for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's overall, I give the movie, like, just in terms of story and characters and everything, I give it like a solid 8.5 out of 10. And then in terms of soundtrack, I give it a 9.5 out of 10 because Can't Catch Me Now,
Good.
like the like all of the music that is sung by Rachel Ziegler, sung by Rachel Ziegler, is fantastic. She does an amazing job all throughout. Like, they're great songs too, just super well written.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a great little like bouncy country vibe to them. It's great. And then the credits song "Can't Catch Me Now" is just fantastic. It's my favorite song from the soundtrack. So yeah, just very good. And visual effects, something that I didn't think about during the movie because they were so good.
Yeah.
Because it's such a...
I couldn't tell.
It's such a... I don't want to call it a small story because there's this huge spanning cityscape and there's all these forested areas and everything, but it's such a contained story that it doesn't need all of these grand, like, extensive CGI.
It's a lot of just landscape.
It's a lot of just landscape adjustment or the CGI snakes and birds, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all that I noticed. Like, there's
the birds are mostly jabberjays, which they have experienced.
Yeah,
the effect for anyway.
It's a bird. It's not that
It's a bird.
The
snakes first.
Were so cool because they had this the iridescence.
Yeah.
So cool. And then there's a couple other little things that they did. Like, obviously there was a ship that came in, some drones that they had to CGI.
Like
a little test tube creature that I hated. But it was great. Everything just, nothing ever took me out of the movie.
Never looked.
Yeah, it
wonky.
always looked good, which is something I always want in a movie. Like, if your visual effects immediately, like, I can notice it and it immediately takes me out of it, they were done poorly.
Like that one preview with the cats.
What? Oh yeah. You're talking. Oh yeah, the trailers. Yeah.
The trailer beforehand. The preview with the
Argyle. For Argyle. Argyle looks like a good movie. Like, I will say, Argyle looks like a good movie, but
it's so clearly CGI.
It's so bad.
Make me cringe every time.
It's so bad. But anyways, we're not talking about that movie. But yeah, so the visual effects of this movie is so good. Everything looked fantastic. So yeah, I can't really say anything else about it without spoiling stuff. So
I think we've
gone
exhausted our spoiler-free options.
So
if you haven't seen it, bye.
Click off now. Good to see you. Bye.
Come back later.
For those of you who are deranged like ourselves, now we get into the goodies. There were so many moments in this movie that I found so good. I almost feel like the actual Hunger Games segment of this movie was a bit darker than the previous films.
Yeah, it's like more primitive compared to the other ones.
It's way more primitive. There's no, like, when you see the arena, when they first introduced to the arena, it's just a room. There's nowhere to go.
There's like stands. It's like an old Roman Empire arena.
It's just yeah, just like an amphitheater basically. That's all it was. So there's bleachers all the way around.
We watched it.
like it's literally just a gladiatory arena, a circle. That's the whole arena. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. It's just you start, you get weapons, and you fight till you die. So it's like a day at the most. And so you get that, and you're like, oh man, this is bad. But not only that, it's the tributes that are picked that I feel like made things a lot darker, because there is a boy with one arm.
Yep.
There is a guy with one eye.
There's
a little girl with Down syndrome.
She's so cute.
And it's like she is just there to just make you
so
bad. She does a fantastic job, and like it provides, like, it's relevant to the story, but it.
Can we leave now?
And she almost made it. That's the part that sucks, is she almost made it. She manages to hide for the entire thing until the Capitol sends in
the snake.
And there's this massive container, and she comes out crying, asking,
"Can we go home?
Can we go home now?" And
she just gets engulfed by snakes.
And it's so. But I knew the second that, because they showed the reaping and everything, and you get to see all the characters that are going to be fighting. And you see that girl pop up, and you're like,
I mean, I knew from the beginning who was going to win, because the movie was not long enough, not short enough.
Like, we've already seen the Hunger Games, and this room is super small, so we know who's winning. But yeah, and so you watch that, and you're like, This is gonna be sad, and it was.
Yeah.
But so just because
he gets rabies.
The one guy gets rabies, like he contracts rabies before the fight.
And he fights it until they get into the arena.
And then he
goes nuts.
Yeah, it's so that, like, and that's the thing. I think. For sure, 2 or 3 of them die before the games even start.
Yeah, one kills their mentor, so he gets shot.
Context. Another thing that I liked about this movie that made it was like, it just made it a lot more unnerving about it, was they bring the tributes in a truck, and they just dump them into literally an abandoned.
A literal zoo.
It's just
It is the tribute zoo
that they dump them into, so people can come in and be like, hey. Throw food at them, and like it's messed up.
Horrible.
And so they're in this area, and then this is also the significance of this movie, is that this is the first year that they ever give the tribute mentors.
This is when this is when the games, as we know them in the Hunger Games movies, kind of come to be, and it's because of it's the first year of mentors, and because of all these suggestions that Snow makes to the head game master.
Yeah, because. Prior to this, it's
literally just to fight in an arena.
Hole, they fight, we televise it, that's it. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, they're like, well, the ratings have gone way down, people aren't watching anymore. How do we remind them that we need the Hunger Games, blah, 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 blah. And Snow's like, well, and so they decide, we'll give them mentors. People to train them up to help them fight in the arena so that they can potentially win. And so they end up assigning it to a bunch of, I forget what Capital students, and I'm not sure what they're like a higher class of students, but I can't remember what exactly it was. But so like the class that Snow is in gets assigned, each of them gets assigned a tribute to mentor and train, and that's the first year they ever do it. And so they end up going to the zoo, talking to them through the bars.
Like giving, the Snow's trying to gain Lucy Gray's trust and like giving her food and all of that. And so there's this other little girl who goes with them, and she's just taunting her tribute with this like bottle of water or something. Gets too close, he smashes the bottle on the bars and stabs her in the throat.
And then he gets shot. So we're 1 down, and the games haven't even started.
Yeah!
And
then the second
one, well, they end up going
They go to the
arena,
yeah.
so that everybody gets to see it and get familiarized themselves with their place of death. And
the rebels
blow it up while everyone's in there because they want it to be a live televisation of this attack so that they get their message. And so I think two tributes die in the explosion. For sure one.
For sure one.
Because one guy...
And one escapes.
One that tries to... One escapes.
One escapes because the explosion damages the gate.
Yeah.
And then one for sure dies.
Yeah. So...
And Snow almost gets crushed.
And Snow almost gets crushed, but then because he's gained the trust of...
Lucy Gray, she saves him.
And then everything is good.
He's not dead.
He's not dead. She's not
He's
dead.
not dead.
Yep. And yeah, so yeah. But that's one thing that I really appreciated about this movie was that they weren't afraid to just kill people off before the games even start. Just no.
There's no protection.
And the students too. I think 2 students die before the games start as well.
One gets bit by snakes.
One gets bit by snakes.
The one gets stabbed in the throat.
Yep.
The one guy gets like fatally wounded in the explosion.
Yeah, that's right.
So like 3 of the mentors die before the games start.
Yeah. So there's just kids dying left and right.
All the time.
All the time. And so yeah, it's a very, very, very cool view of the Hunger Games because you get to see how like what leads up to, let's have a more expansive map to make things more interesting. Let's have more variety of weapons. Let's throw the mutants in there and like all the genetic hybrids that we're creating in the lab. And
let's let people send supplies into them.
Right, and that's the first year for that. And so you get all of these things and you realize, these are all just their attempts to literally gain ratings.
Gain viewership.
On gladiatorial combat so that they can continue killing children. So you're like, oh my gosh, but it's so fascinating to watch. You're like, this is messed up. Show me more. I want to see it. But it's so cool. And just watching how Snow comes to also trust Lucy Gray and then decides, you know what, I'm willing to put myself on the line. I'm going to cheat in the games to ensure that she gets out of there alive.
They give you rat poison?
Yeah, he gives her rat poison
I'm going to familiarize the poisonous snakes with your scent so they won't bite you.
So context for this. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole movie that was an overarching thing. I'm so glad that they actually brought it back. Snow has come up with all of these concepts to gain more ratings with the Hunger Games. His class partner just wants to gain a higher standing for herself. So she says, we're doing this project together, Miss Scientist Lady who's in charge of the game master. They're like, we're doing this together, so I'm also part of this project. And so Snow ends up sending in his paper with all of his suggestions to this lady. And in the morning, the 2 of them go to her lab to discuss it. And the lab lady says, unfortunately my assistant thought that the paper was trash, so she lined the snake's cage with it.
Which one of you wrote it?
Which one of you wrote it? And the lady's like, and the girl's like, I wrote it. And she's like, well, unfortunately it's in the cage, but lucky for you, the snakes are now familiar with your scent. So go ahead and grab it. And so the girl
goes for it.
The girl, not willing to admit that she had been lying, goes for it and immediately gets bit and heals over like instantly. And the girl and so the scientist lady, I can't remember the scientist lady.
It's a D something.
It's another of those weird Hunger Game names. But she's like, well, that's what you get for lying. See ya. And they're like,
go tell her parents. I need to know how she got this flu.
One thing that I loved about that scene was Snow like, is she gonna die? And then the scientist lady says, well, the benefit of experimentation is that we get to find out. Okay. But then at the end of the Hunger Games section of the movie, they're going to send in the snakes to just kill everyone because they don't want any survivors. They don't want Lucy Gray to win and blah, 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 blah. So they're just going to send in the snakes because of the rebel attack. Because of the rebel attack, they're going to send in the snakes. They're going to kill everybody to make a statement. And so Snow realizes this, sneaks his way into the lab, ends up putting a handkerchief that he had wiped Lucy Gray's face with into the snake tank before it gets carried away by the ship. And so she ends up
surrounded by snakes.
And everyone else dies. She is just covered in snakes.
They aren't attacking her, just singing.
Defiantly singing into the camera as all of these snakes just wrap around her.
Crawl up and oh god.
So cool. I saw that happening. I was like, oh, this is, yes. Thank you so much. I'm so glad they did this because it was easily. But then, of course, they end up discovering that Snow was cheating because they find the
handkerchief and the container of the rat poison.
And so they end up banishing him, exiling him to. They were going to send him to District 8 to be a peacekeeper, but he ends up bribing his way to District 12 in an attempt to find Lucy Gray again because she ends up winning the Hunger Games because of the snake.
Yeah. Ooh, another cool scene from the Hunger Games. One of the guys, his partner or whatever from his district, dies because he accidentally drinks rat poison. So he just starts gathering up all of the bodies.
Yes.
And lays them in one spot, rips down a Capitol flag and covers them with it.
Yeah.
And then looks in the camera and says, "Are you gonna punish me now?"
It's great because you get the.
He's such a meta character, but just
that's his. I'm pretty sure that's his only line.
Just about, yeah.
Because he comes in.
He mostly goes just.
It's the first scene that he talks because he comes in, sees her dying, and is like, and
says
her name,
hey, what happened?
Starts
Realizes
freaking out.
He's dead.
And then he does his amazing act of defiance, and it's so good, especially just because all of these people have previously had literally just been trying to murder him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decided, no, I understand, like, everyone here is not here
by choice.
I'm gonna show them the respect that they deserve. And so he ends up giving them a burial of sorts, and it's such a cool scene. Because you don't get that kind of thing in the other Hunger Games movies, because basically there's Katniss and Peeta and everyone else sucks.
That's also, at this point, it's the norm, and this is only played 10 years after that.
Yeah, and so people
it's
are
still fresh, and it's still like right after the war, and so rebels are still high in activity.
And it's super, super interesting to watch because it's such a heartfelt moment, especially for such a minor character. You're like, man, that's so good. This character had like no lines.
Screaming at the camera.
It's literally like, I forgot you were in this movie until this moment, and now you are just ingrained in
I forgot you were alive. And here you are, and it's great.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And then, Snow gets exiled, bribes his way to District 12, along with his friend Sejanus, who is the son of one of the wealthiest families in the capital,
but he's from the district and bought his way into the capital.
His family bought their way into the capital, and so he's kind of hated. But that means he also has a perspective from the district, so he's very much against the Hunger Games, and so he follows Snow in an attempt to do some good in the districts. And then we get some of the most interesting and most despicable things that Snow does. Mm-hmm. It's super fascinating to watch, mainly because you understand his reasoning for doing all of it. And you're like, you hate it. You hate that you understand. You want to see him be a good guy, but you're like, you are so close. You know he's gonna be bad, but you're like, maybe they'll just defy all of the continuity and just make him a good guy. But no. He ends up, so obviously Sejanus is a good guy and starts helping the rebels.
Well, he's not necessarily rebels. He's helping people escape the district.
Yes, he's trying to help people get out of the district so they can start a new life. But what he doesn't realize is that the people trying to do this are rebels.
And have other plans.
And are also trying to smuggle guns into the districts so that they can start killing more peacekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
And then Snow uncovers this because his whole deal is, I just watch people. I'm just going to watch people and figure out things, and that's how I get ahead of them, is because I just learn things. And so he obviously notices that Sejanus is doing this.
And so they're packing up Jabberjays to send to the head game master to use in the games. And he records an entire conversation where Sejanus just like confesses his plans. And he sends it with the Jabberjay to the head game master.
And it's so interesting to watch because you're watching it and you're like, Snow clearly does consider Sejanus his friend.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he
values
the capital's opinion of him so much that he's willing to just outright sentence his friend to death because he feels like it's a betrayal. And it's so interesting because you're like, oh man, then he's not his friend. But when you're watching Snow in the movie, you're like, no, he genuinely, he wants this guy to do well, but he's so paranoid and self-centered that he's still gonna end up getting him killed. And so you're watching this play out and you're like, oh, now I'm just sad.
Yeah.
And so, inevitably, and the other thing about it is too, as Snow is following Sejanus around and learning all these things, he ends up discovering the weapons stockpile, encountering a bunch of the rebels. Then the mayor's daughter is the girlfriend of one of the rebels. Yeah. And she says, "Oh, I'm gonna go tell my dad. You guys are all screwed." She starts to leave. Snow, in a moment of just instinct, pulls a gun and shoots her, kills her dead. And then the boyfriend starts freaking out, and he's like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "She's my." When he finds out she's dead, I'm gonna die too, because he's gonna think it was me.
If I go to the noose, you're coming with me.
And so Snow shoots him.
Actually, it's not even Snow, it's the other guy.
Oh, that's right, the other guy shoots him.
He charges Snow, and the other guy goes, nope, boom!
So 2 people die, and this all happens in front of
Sejanus and Lucy Gray.
And Sejanus is freaking out because this is never what he intended. He wanted to.
Lucy's freaking out because he's like,
she's like, I'm a tribute, and also the guy that you just killed used to be my boyfriend, and they're gonna suspect me because I didn't like
now
her.
Both of them are dead.
And they established early in the movie that the mayor's daughter did not like her, and she did not like the mayor's daughter, and so
that her old boyfriend was cheating on her with the mayor's daughter.
And so it's like so blatantly clear that they are all doomed. And so Snow is like, okay, we're getting out of town. It'll all be fine. We're gonna escape. And then the rebels get caught. And Sejanus
and the rebel and the lady they were trying to free before they left the districts all get hanged.
And so Snow says, you know what? We gotta go. Like right now. And so he and Lucy Gray decide that they're gonna run away. And as they're running away, Snow accidentally lets it slip that he is essentially the one who sentenced Sejanus to death. And so you get this insanely, like, it's so tense every moment after that because it's hard to determine whether or not Snow is just being paranoid or Lucy Gray is genuinely going to betray him and knows what he did. So you're watching this play out, and they both play it so well because Snow ends up finding the weapons that they were going to get that was in the whole stockpile that would tie him to the murders in the cottage where they're staying. And then immediately after that, Lucy Gray says, oh, I'll be right back. I'm going to go look for some Katniss, and I'll be back. And the way she portrays it is, you're like, she might be going to tell on him, she might not. And the way Snow portrays it is, he is just convinced that she's going to betray him. And so you're watching the scene play out, and you're like, I genuinely don't know what she's gonna do. And they never confirm or deny anything. Because
we assume she knows he at least lied.
yes, she knows that he lied about something.
And trust is huge for her. And so I think she was at least trying to leave without him.
Yes. But then
as
she's
follows
leaving,
her into the woods.
and he finds this shawl that was his mother's that he gave to her, and in it there's a snake that bites him. And that convinces him.
Nuts.
It convinces
He acts
him
genuinely insane.
that she is trying to kill him. He is convinced at this point that she is trying to kill him.
Just starts like screaming into the forest and waving his gun around. Like, you're insane!
And
You're
then
just cracked!
he hears the twig snap, sees her running, and immediately shoots.
Fires twice.
Immediately fires at her. And it's never revealed if he actually hit her. It's never revealed.
He finds it steering.
And
that's it.
And that's it.
We have no idea if she's alive or not.
You hear her singing in the woods, and then nothing. And you never see her again. You have no clue if she died. You have no clue if she
escaped the
district. And you never hear from her again. And so it's just this insane enigma. And the best part about it is Peter Dinklage's character, Highbottom, which is just...
wonderful name.
I love that name. From Peter Dinklage. If there's anything about him that's true, he does not have a high bottom. but his character has this amazing line that just kind of wraps up that whole sequence perfectly, which is that nobody knows what happens to her. She vanished. It's a complete mystery, and mysteries have a way of driving one mad. And it's like, so yeah, you're never gonna tell us what happened. And that's the whole deal behind Snow, is that he's now constantly fearing for himself. Because the one person that he trusted, he convinced himself that she was going to betray him, and then she escaped, and he's never seen her again, and now he's just constantly in fear of his life. Regardless of whether or not it's from her directly, he has now developed just this constant paranoia that the only one that's going to protect him is him. And so now he has completely turned the corner to the power-hungry, like, if I don't have power and control everything, then those in power will take me out. And it's super fascinating. And then the end shot, the end shot is of him walking up to a statue in the city square of, I'm not sure who it's supposed to depict, but it's clearly
a
like
lady with two swords crossed over her head.
right,
It's
and
like the symbol of the games at that
symbol of the
point.
games, essentially. And he walks up to it, and it zooms in on him, and then as you get that close shot of him, the snow starts falling. And it's so good! It's so good.
Also, the wrap up of Peter Dinklage's character.
Yeah.
He's credited as the creator of the games, but he said the idea when he was drunk for an assignment. They were just like, how do we punish the district so that they never rise up again? And so he says it as a joke to his friend, Snow's father, who takes it completely seriously and writes it down, puts both their names on it, and
also takes credit for it,
and brings it to the uppers or whatever, and they run with it. And so he has a whole ending explanation where he's like, I've tried things to end the games.
Yeah, he's like, my whole life I've been attempting to end the games, and he's like,
so
I started taking morphine because I couldn't deal with all of the blood on my hands, and then you came along and made even more, and so
now the blood of even more generations is on my head.
And because throughout the whole movie, he's constantly taking morphine, and he's just clearly just a drunk, and he's just miserable the whole time. And so you're like, oh man, now you understand why. And why the whole time he's constantly saying, like, maybe the game should just end. Why should we try and gain more ratings? Maybe we should just end.
And why he hates Snow so much.
Hates Snow. And so you get that moment, and So, and in this scene, Snow is delivering Sejanus's
Personal effects
to him, which includes some morphine because he had injured his leg. And so he leaves that with him and very biting remarks, and then leaves. And Highbottom,
because
in a moment of stress and just anger and whatever, sees the morphine, takes it, and realizes it's been poisoned by Snow.
And he dies.
And he dies. And it's the first time that you see Snow use his method of, somebody's in my way, just poison him. And so it's so interesting to watch, because you're like, this whole time, it's the one character that he's truly hated throughout this entire movie, because it's the one character that just truly hates him. And so you see that resolution to their relationship, and that's like the final point where it's like, okay,
you are now President Snow.
So interesting. It's so cool. Yeah. It's so good. And it's also cool because we get to see a version of the Capitol that we had never seen before, which is it's got this facade of posh and regal people who in reality, they're only trying to look like they're civilized, and on the meanwhile they can't pay rent, or like they're starving to a degree. And so it's like you're watching this false version of the Capitol that will eventually evolve into the fully decadent, fully exaggerated and ridiculous version of the Capitol in the future, and it's super, super cool.
We also get the origin of the hanging tree.
Yeah, it's the origin
of
the hanging tree. We
get the actual hanging tree and the entire situation that is spelled out in the verses of the song, and then we have Lucy Gray singing it in a meadow, and he's like, oh, that's where it came from. And it's just so cool to have the origins of all these things. Like, she names the plant Katniss, that ends up being the main character's name. She writes the Hanging Tree song, which she later sings in Mockingjay. It's just context for everything.
And it makes you understand Snow's obsession with Katniss.
Yeah. Because
she is essentially the legacy of Lucy Gray. And so it adds a bit of completeness to the character of Snow. And it's just fantastic.
So good.
Just fantastic. So well done, so well executed. Yeah. Long story short. Are we doing on battery? Her laptop is almost dead, so we're trying.
Not dead yet.
Not dead yet, but it's getting there.
It's getting there. And I think we may have run out of thoughts anyway.
Yes.
So,
long story short, watch the movie.
So good. So freaking great. Oh.
If you love Hunger Games, watch the movie.
Yes. If you also watched it and have rants to drop in the comments, feel free to do that as well. Anyway, I post videos every Wednesday and Saturday. We'll see y'all next time.